and why. It would have been so easy to be honest about who she is and to be proud and to empower other women when she's out there using her platform.
Bit of background, CBS is the woke US network that Harry and Meghan love. It's where they sat down with Oprah Winfrey. It's where they sat down with Stephen Colbert. It's where they sat down with Anderson Cooper. They feel safe on CBS. They think it's their mates. They're never going to be asked any difficult questions. So that's the environment. Because remember, Harry and Meghan don't just want to censor social media. They actually want to censor the mainstream media as well. They want to live in a controlled ecosystem. Now, I have a lot more faith because of your amendment to the Constitution that it won't be able to happen in the US. But I'm absolutely terrified, Sam, that it's going to happen here in the UK with this hard left Labour government.
They called her a modern Cinderella, but that fairy tale never fully clicked. On the surface, everything looked perfect, polished, almost too good to question. But underneath, something always felt slightly off, like a story trying just a little too hard to prove it was real. Meghan Markle didn't just enter the spotlight, she took control of it. She reshaped the narrative, turned moments into headlines, and made sure attention stayed exactly where she wanted it. From Hollywood ambitions to royal family tensions, this wasn't a quiet rise. It became something louder, more dramatic, and impossible to ignore. Welcome to Crown Aura, where royal drama gets broken down piece by piece, and trust me, you do not want to miss what unfolds next. Subscribe now and stay with the channel for the latest twists, major claims, and non-stop royal updates. She placed herself right at the center of it all, balancing emotional public appearances with perfectly timed moments that kept people watching non-stop. Every speech, every reaction, every reveal seemed designed to create impact. Even critics admit there's a clear strategy behind it, and it's sharp. But here's where things start to shift. Behind that polished image and controlled presence, Samantha Markle, watching from the sidelines, has been raising serious questions. She claims there's more happening than what's being shown publicly, details that don't get discussed, parts of the story that stay carefully out of view. And according to her, the timeline people have been given doesn't fully add up. Once she pushed for a closer look, things escalated fast.
We were kind of puzzled when both sides of the family were kept away from the royal wedding, and we started wondering, what's up with this?
The internet jumped in, conversations spread quickly, and suddenly people were breaking everything down. Timelines, appearances, small details, nothing was left untouched. What once looked like a smooth, flawless narrative started facing waves of doubt, curiosity, and non-stop speculation. Now the story doesn't feel simple anymore. It feels layered, full of tension, unanswered questions, and unexpected turns. And once those cracks start to show, it changes how everything is seen. Every royal story seems to need a villain. But this time, Samantha Markle isn't playing that role. Instead of staying quiet and fading into the background, she's stepping forward with her own version of events, and it's grabbing attention fast. She watched her half-sister go from a cable TV actress to a global duchess, cameras flashing, headlines everywhere, stepping into royal life while her past seemed to transform into something more polished, more powerful. To the public, it looked seamless, like everything was always leading to that moment. Like the spotlight was always meant for her. But behind the scenes, Samantha tells a very different story. For a long time, she stayed quiet, keeping her distance while the world focused on Meghan's new life. But that silence didn't last forever. Over time, it started to feel heavy, like her perspective was being completely pushed aside. Because while the public saw speeches about compassion and connection, Samantha claims something else was happening privately. She says there was distance, not just from attention, but from family itself. She points to moments that didn't quite make sense, connections that once existed suddenly fading without clear explanation. According to her, communication broke down. Calls went unanswered, and the gap between public image and private reality kept getting wider and wider. And then came the moment everything shifted. Samantha didn't shout, didn't create a scene. She made one calm, focused statement that spread fast. She told people to look at the timeline, and just like that, everything changed. That one phrase triggered a wave of online attention.
You wouldn't want anyone to feel that way. Well, gee, you never thought to stop the Sussex squad from harassing people online or from PR writing disparaging articles about everyone. And so it certainly seems like, you know, when you talk about cyberbullying and online and you're alluding to censorship, oh my God, what about self-censorship? What about considering your own contributions to the suffering of others.
People started digging, comparing dates, analyzing events, and questioning how certain pieces fit together. Conversations grew louder, spread faster, and what once looked like a clean, controlled narrative started facing serious public scrutiny. From that point on, the image that once seemed untouchable began showing cracks, and once those cracks appeared, more questions followed. At first, many people brushed it off. Look at the timeline sounded like just another passing rumor, something that would fade away quickly. But once people actually started digging deeper, it didn't feel so simple anymore. The more details they examined, the more complicated everything started to look. Then people went back to October 2018, when Kensington Palace announced Meghan was expecting, just months after the wedding. On the surface, it sounded like a perfect royal update. But now, with everything being re-examined, that moment started getting a second look. At first, it seemed like a moment everyone could celebrate. But as time passed, some observers began noticing what they felt was missing from the usual royal coverage. There were no widely shared hospital arrival photos, no clearly identified doctors speaking publicly, and no detailed first-hand accounts describing the birth. And for a royal event of that level, that absence stood out, because typically, moments like this are documented closely, almost down to the minute. So when certain details weren't visible, people started asking questions. Then came the clips that really fueled the conversation. One video in particular went viral, showing Meghan crouching while pregnant, and suddenly, everyone had an opinion. Some viewers said it was just camera angles or fabric shifting, nothing unusual. Others weren't so sure and began analyzing the footage more closely, sharing their own interpretations online. And just like that, the discussion took off. Fast forward to 2021, when the second pregnancy was announced, and the same conversations started appearing again. Critics online pointed to what they saw as a similar pattern. They mentioned limited public details, delays in widely discussed documents, and a level of privacy that only seemed to spark even more curiosity. At the same time, older stories began resurfacing. People started revisiting past claims, trying to connect them with the current timeline. None of it was confirmed, but that didn't stop the momentum. The discussions kept building, and the speculation grew louder. For some, it stopped feeling like coincidence and started feeling like a puzzle they wanted to solve.
And I think she felt an alliance with Meg, but for Meg to twist that and to lie and then suggest that the reason she couldn't go to the wedding, to put that on me when that was not true at all.
And suddenly, Samantha's earlier words, "Look at the timeline," started getting repeated again and again. As more people dug into dates, details, and public appearances, the conversation kept expanding. And just when it seemed like all attention was locked onto the palace, something unexpected happened. A new voice appeared out of nowhere. Not a royal insider, not a well-known figure, just someone using the name DL. No background, no title, nothing to verify, just 2 letters and a story that spread fast across the internet. DL claimed she had stayed silent for years, held back by strict agreements and legal limits. Until now. And that claim alone was enough to pull even more attention into an already growing storm. And when she finally spoke, the claims she made sent shockwaves across online discussions. This wasn't a vague statement or a distant opinion. She presented herself as someone directly involved in a deeply personal way. And that alone was enough to ignite intense reactions everywhere. Social media exploded. People started debating, questioning, and trying to piece together what her claims could actually mean. The conversation moved fast, and it didn't slow down. According to her, everything was handled with extreme privacy. She described visits to high-end medical facilities in Beverly Hills, where every detail was tightly controlled. She claimed names were kept off records, schedules were carefully arranged, and every step was planned to avoid attention. It painted a picture of something highly managed, far from a typical public process. In her words, it felt like a closed system, movements coordinated, information limited, and only a small number of people aware of what was happening. After each visit, she said she was expected to step away completely, leaving no trace, no visibility, nothing that could be easily followed. DL described herself as someone pushed into the background of a much bigger public story, saying she felt invisible, despite being connected to something she believed was significant. When she shared her experience, the tone was emotional and intense. It didn't come across as casual. It sounded like something she had held onto for a long time. But here's where things escalated even further. She didn't just claim to have a story. She said she had supporting material, documents, records, and details tied to specific timelines, and that's what pulled even more attention in.
Mental health experts don't behave that way. And clearly, we're talking about two people, Harry and Meghan, are not degreed. They're not mental health experts. And I don't really think they understand those definitions or what the criteria is for clinical depression.
And also, Sam, charity starts at home. Charity starts at home. If you're not caring for your own family, you've got a real issue.
She pointed to things like ultrasounds labeled with coded names, payment trails moving through layered accounts, and details that immediately caught the attention of people who follow stories like this closely. This wasn't presented as loose speculation. It was framed in a way that made people stop and take a second look. According to DL, the information she referenced appeared to line up with the public timeline already known. She claimed clinic visits matched key public appearances, almost as if everything was moving in sync behind the scenes. And once that idea entered the conversation, it pushed the entire story into an even more intense spotlight. For some people online, it stopped feeling like coincidence and started looking like a pattern waiting to be noticed. That shift alone changed how the entire situation was being viewed. Then came another layer. DL began talking about what she called digital traces, screenshots, messages, and records. She claimed these used initials instead of full names, all connected to carefully managed identities. That detail pulled even more attention into the story. She also described strict agreements, saying they were designed to keep everyone involved from ever speaking publicly. According to her, silence wasn't optional. It was expected. And then things reportedly changed. DL claimed that during the second pregnancy timeline, communication shifted, and payments she expected became inconsistent. She described that moment as a turning point, a point where she felt pushed aside and no longer willing to stay quiet. Once those claims hit the internet, everything moved fast. Really fast.
Generally, it's been such a roller coaster that nothing surprises me anymore.
Yeah, and I guess you have been predicting for some time that maybe they are not in quite as strong a place.
Hashtags started trending, discussions exploded, and more people began digging into the details. Even though much of it remained unverified, the level of attention kept growing. But what truly shifted the tone was one bold statement. DL publicly said that if her claims were false, she would be willing to take a DNA test on live TV. That line changed everything. It took the conversation from speculation and pushed it into something people saw as a direct challenge, something more serious, more confrontational, and impossible to ignore. And when there wasn't an immediate, detailed response addressing those claims, it only added fuel to the fire. Curiosity grew. Questions multiplied, and people started rethinking what they thought they knew. Then that challenge started circulating everywhere, shared, reposted, repeated across platforms. And just like that, it hit like a shockwave. The story didn't just grow, it exploded. News spread faster than anyone expected. And suddenly, it was everywhere. Hashtags went global, comment sections turned chaotic, and opinions clashed from every direction. Some people called her brave for speaking out, while others dismissed it instantly, questioning every part of her story. But even with all the noise, one question kept rising above everything else. What if there's some truth to it? That single thought pushed more people to dig deeper. They started looking past headlines, breaking down details, and trying to connect every piece they could find. Talk shows began circling the topic. Online creators started analyzing clips and timelines step by step, and major outlets kept watching closely as the story kept building.
And in my opinion, this is what it seemed like. Seal off the hatches so nobody can talk. And almost instantly, it seemed as though dirt was being thrown upon us so that if somebody did speak to us, that we would have no credibility.
It felt like everyone was trying to solve the same puzzle at the same time. What fits, what doesn't, what's real, and what isn't. And right in the middle of all this, silence. Meghan and Harry didn't issue a direct response, didn't offer detailed clarification, didn't address the growing speculation. And instead of calming things down, that silence had the opposite effect. It made people even more curious. The conversations didn't slow, they intensified. Then Samantha stepped back in, but not the way people expected. She didn't confirm anything, didn't deny anything. She shared a simple quote tied to her father. "The truth doesn't fear questions." It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, But it landed hard, and it kept the conversation going. Behind the scenes, reports and speculation pointed to growing concern among those connected to royal matters. There were mentions of internal discussions, quiet monitoring, and a sense that this wasn't being ignored. Because what started as online claims was now being talked about as something much bigger. The conversation began shifting, moving away from internet chatter and into more serious territory. People started bringing up long-standing royal rules, traditions, and structures.
So it was an interesting phenomenon, and this vicious cycle of wanting to set the record straight, wondering what was going on with her, wanting to give her the benefit of the doubt, and still all the while feeling like we were defending ourselves against things that weren't real in the media and always out there.
One detail kept coming up again and again, the principle that royal succession follows strict guidelines tied to lineage. And that's when things took an even heavier turn, because now, this wasn't just about claims or speculation anymore. It was about what those claims could mean. If proven true or false, how would something like this impact a system built on tradition, structure, and history? That question alone pushed the entire story into a whole new level. And if DL's claims were ever proven true, even partially, it would raise serious questions about long-standing royal traditions. That's where the conversation started getting heavier. What began as one unverified story suddenly carried much bigger weight. People started talking about rules that have existed for generations, rules usually kept behind palace doors. Speculation grew quickly. Reports suggested legal teams could be looking at complex questions, trying to balance modern realities with historic expectations, trying to figure out how something like this would even fit into a system built on strict structure. At the same time, public reactions split in two directions. Some argued that institutions evolve and should reflect the world as it is today. Others pushed back hard, saying traditions tied to lineage and history should remain untouched. And just like that, the debate spread everywhere. Commentators, analysts, online, communities. Everyone had something to say.
And that was all lies too. And to suggest that at one point that they allegedly said they sent a car and he refused to get in.
Content creators broke down timelines, theories, and possible outcomes. Every angle was being explored. Even the most unexpected ideas started gaining traction as more people joined the conversation for the first time. And slowly, the focus began to shift. It wasn't just about personal disagreements anymore. It became something much bigger, a conversation about stability, tradition, and how much pressure a system can handle before it starts to change. Because moments like this don't just create headlines, they reveal how institutions respond when they're challenged. And right now, that response is being watched very closely. Many observers pointed out that protecting the overall structure of the monarchy has always been the top priority. And through all of this, the palace stayed completely silent. No direct response, no clarification, nothing. But this time, that silence felt different. Instead of calming things down, it created more space for speculation to grow. With every hour that passed without an official statement, the conversations only got louder. Media panels started debating possible strategies, while online communities kept digging, going through past appearances, photos, and public records, searching for anything that could bring clarity. And the story just kept expanding. Supporters of the Sussexes pushed back hard, calling the entire situation a witch hunt. At the same time, skeptics fired back just as strongly, saying something didn't add up. The divide grew sharper by the day, and right in the middle of it all stood Samantha, calm, controlled, and completely steady under pressure. She appeared on talk shows without raising her voice, without attacking anyone, just repeating her message about truth, dignity, and what she described as accountability within a family. And that approach made her stand out even more, because while everything around her felt loud and chaotic, she stayed focused and measured. With every interview, more attention shifted toward her claims, and some viewers began looking at Meghan's public image from a different angle. This wasn't a loud confrontation, it was something slower, a steady stream of statements that kept people thinking, questioning, and coming back for more. Then came another moment that added even more tension.
And in order to cover up, oh my God, so you didn't get grants and scholarships. You never worked for the embassy. What do you mean you only did a 5-week study program?
At one point, Samantha hinted she wasn't finished, that there could be more information still to come if things continued. That single suggestion changed the tone again. It made people wonder what else might surface if the situation escalated further. Meanwhile, media coverage hit another level. Reporters started chasing leads, legal experts debated privacy boundaries, and commentators admitted they hadn't seen public interest split this sharply in a long time. And with that, the story moved into an even more intense phase, one where every new detail could shift everything again. Every unanswered question seemed to create another headline, and every new headline pulled in even more attention. For critics, the continued silence from Meghan and Harry raised even more doubts. For supporters, that same silence was seen as a refusal to engage with speculation. But either way, that silence became one of the loudest parts of the entire situation. Then came a moment that cut straight through all the noise. No crowds, no flashing cameras, just a quiet studio and a direct question. When Samantha was asked if she regretted speaking out, she paused and then gave a calm but firm answer that spread everywhere almost instantly. Only if the truth stops being the truth. That line changed everything, because she wasn't asking people to believe her anymore. She was challenging anyone to prove her wrong, and that shift turned the conversation from explanation into confrontation. Suddenly, even more attention was locked onto what she was saying. Samantha spoke about moments she claims never happened, family gatherings that didn't exist, calls that were never returned, and a growing distance that she believes was reshaped into something more favorable for the public image. She described it as a narrative built over time, carefully shaped, where some details were highlighted while others were left out completely, and the way she delivered it made an impact. Her tone stayed steady, controlled, and direct. No outbursts, no scattered points, just clear statements that kept people listening.
There seemed to be a disconnect, and so I don't know what that was all about, but yeah, I think clearly we've got some issues going on with them, in my opinion, really needing to be heard. And it seems inappropriate, and it seems like they're grasping for straws.
She made it clear she wasn't looking for sympathy or attention. Her focus, she said, was on what she believes is the truth being overshadowed by a more polished version of events. And then came the final moment of that interview. As it wrapped up, she left one line that quickly spread across every platform. History will remember who spoke the truth first. That was enough to send the clip viral within hours. Reactions came in fast, and from every direction. Supporters praised her for speaking out, while critics pushed back just as strongly, questioning her motives and her claims. But no matter which side people were on, one thing was clear: everyone was watching, listening, and debating non-stop. And this moment shifted the entire tone of the story. It no longer felt like a simple back and forth. It started to feel deeper, more layered, more complicated, and much harder to ignore. After everything that surfaced, the interviews, the online breakdowns, the claims spreading across platforms, what remained wasn't clarity. It was questions, a divided audience, a story still unfolding in real time, and a narrative being challenged from every possible angle. Whether people see it as truth, frustration, or something in between, one thing stands out. This situation has left a lasting impact on how the story is viewed, and it's not something that's going to be smoothed over or forgotten anytime soon. The tension didn't fade, it tightened, like a standoff where neither side was willing to step back. Meghan stayed out of sight, keeping her circle small and controlled, while Samantha kept stepping forward, making it clear she wasn't finished speaking. And that contrast? It only made everything more intense. Behind the scenes, subtle shifts started getting noticed. Public appearances became more controlled, statements from royal sources sounded carefully crafted, and every small detail began getting analyzed like it meant something bigger. But the silence from Meghan's side didn't calm anything down. It did the opposite. It made Samantha's voice stand out even more, and Samantha leaned into that attention. She continued speaking with the same steady tone, but now with sharper focus. She hinted that what had already been revealed was only a fraction of a much larger story, that more could come if things kept being ignored. And that one suggestion, it kept the pressure building. People started waiting, watching, for what might come next. At the same time, Meghan's supporters pushed back harder than ever, defending her image, questioning Samantha's motives, pointing out inconsistencies, and arguing that this was being blown into something far bigger than it needed to be. But that clash didn't settle anything. It amplified it. Every time Samantha spoke, debates reignited. And every time Meghan stayed silent, the mystery deepened. It became a cycle, one that fed itself, growing louder and more intense with each passing day. Then came another twist, Whispers started circulating about possible legal options being considered behind the scenes. Nothing confirmed, nothing official, but enough to spark a whole new wave of speculation. Suddenly,
even though he'd only met Meghan when she was a baby. And so, well, a 5-week study program that doesn't equate with working at the embassy.
the conversation shifted again. People started asking a new question. What happens if this moves beyond public debate and into something more serious? And then that question spread fast. What if one side finally breaks the silence? For real, that idea took over. And just like that, all eyes locked onto one thing. Would Meghan respond? The pressure kept building. Headlines grew louder, opinions stronger, and the demand for clarity refused to go away. Then, something happened. Not a full interview, not a direct response, but a carefully worded message released through a close source. Every word felt measured, every sentence carefully designed to push back, without saying too much. The message focused on privacy, dignity, and protecting family, but it stopped short of directly addressing Samantha or the claims being discussed online. And that detail, it changed everything again. Supporters called it graceful, saying it showed restraint under pressure. Critics saw it differently. They pointed to what wasn't said, arguing that avoiding key details made the silence even louder. And Samantha? She didn't take long to respond. No shouting, no dramatic reaction, just calm precision. She suggested that avoiding direct answers didn't resolve anything. It only created more questions. And with that, the tension didn't ease. It tightened even further. Her tone stayed sharp. And once again, she made it clear she was ready to go even further if pushed. And just like that, the situation shifted into something even more intense. This wasn't just a public back and forth anymore. It became a strategic standoff. Meghan's side choosing controlled, careful messaging, Samantha choosing direct pressure and bold statements, and both sides pulling the public deeper into the story. Behind the scenes, talk of legal action started getting louder. Commentators began asking what would happen if this crossed the line from interviews into formal challenges. Could this escalate into something far more serious? That question alone kept the tension high, because now every move felt calculated, every word was analyzed, every silence questioned, nothing was being ignored, and instead of slowing down, the story kept building. Then came another twist. A new rumor started gaining traction, suggesting someone else might be ready to step forward with their own version of events. And just like that, the situation opened up even further, because this story doesn't wrap up neatly. It leaves everything hanging. Two sides, two completely different versions, and a truth that still feels just out of reach. The tension between Meghan and Samantha hasn't cooled. It's only grown sharper, louder, and more public. Every statement, every pause, every hint keeps people watching, questioning, and choosing sides. And the biggest question still stands: what's actually real? And what's been carefully shaped for the spotlight? Now it's your turn. What do you think? Is Samantha telling the truth, or is this being blown out of proportion? Why do you think Meghan has stayed mostly silent through all of this? And if more proof comes out, would it change everything, or just make things even more confusing? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your take. If you made it this far, hit like, subscribe for more deep dives like this, and share this with someone else following the story. Because this isn't over, and the next twist could change everything.